Alright, let's see. It says no data, but then it also says live. Up. Alright, hello to no one currently watching because I'm not doing my regular weekly stream today, but I may as well, for the record, actually get, the initial recording stuff started anyway. Hello, it is I, and I am joined by my usual co-host, surprising him completely out of nowhere, Cybernetic Pink Eye.
It's really no surprise at this point.
It is a surprise. I keep saying I'm going to stream more than once a week, and then I fucking actually do it, and it's like, but I wanted to finish editing. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
That literally was the conversation. I was like, okay, I need to finish this thing, but you already got me by the fishing hook, okay.
No, I got you by the entertainer's hook.
Yeah, I was about to say it's a reverse Apollo Theater situation.
Yeah, instead of...
The stage.
Yep. Like, yeah, you're not gonna... It's like, nope, you're coming on with me. I'm not doing this alone. You won't take me. Hello, people. Not gonna lie, they do be arting. Yes, I do arty the thingy today. I have some work that I want to get finished by this weekend, and while I have been working on it pretty steadily throughout these last couple of weeks, I figure, why don't I be productive and also spend some time chatting with all of you guys? So, y'all who come by this stream, you're going to be getting, actually, officially, a preview of an upcoming video that I am really crossing my fingers, and I'm sure that I should be able to get through with it. A video that should be releasing on Sirenia Studios this weekend. For those of you who may have been wondering what the fuck is going on with the Ballad of Lorelei, guess what? Ah, God. How long ago did we actually write this script? It's been obviously over a year, but...
I was about to say, it was at least last year.
If not sooner. But, so yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just arranging some stuff around the board here, because I may have two screens, but one of them needs to get taken up by the art program. There it is. Alright, see what I can do to keep track of the chat. There we go. Alright. So I'm going to be obviously flipping around, because I've got also the script open so that I know what art I'm going to be doing. But, yes, I love that the first thing that pops up is the cartoony Lorelei. Well, I brought you on for commentary, and you're real super good at that right now.
I mean...
Alright. So, I'm teasing. I know it's kind of a low-key day in the first place. Oh, and not a low-key day, which would be, well, confusing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a low-key year. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, it's a Ragnarok year, let's be real.
God.
In the traditional sense, not the Marvel Cinematic Universe sense.
I mean, you're not wrong either way.
There we go. So, time to open a new one of these. And so... but yeah, I'm actually only a few frames of actually being finished with this, so I was like, hey, why don't I just show up here?
Yeah. Just had a Joey moment. Hey!
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 Hey! Okay.
Meatball sandwich!
Did you say meatball sandwich?
I tried to say meatball sandwich, but I guess whatever. It works either way.
No, I heard meatball. I may have slurred something, but I was just... I'm just confused by literally the whole concept of meatball sandwich, and also, yes, John Morrison. Yes, Alex. Also, welcome.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, it's been a while since I watched Friends, which should surprise you, not in the least, but...
How you doing?
Yeah, exactly. The main things I remember about Joey being he's a flirt, he's an idiot, and he likes meatball sandwiches.
That's true, but he also likes all food.
That's fair.
I still think one of my favorite movies... Jesus Christ. I have a lot of favorite movies, so anyway. And some of them actually intersect with yours, like
I was about to say, you saw my fucking tangent on Twitter the other day.
There's Little Shop of Horrors, there's Clue, the second of which I introduced to you.
I was about to say, you've introduced me to some of my favorite movies, including, most recently, Being John Malkovich.
Ooh, yes. So that's a movie. I did actually see it on Netflix for those of you who are watching, and if you're curious enough to actually check that out.
Yeah, and some of our favorite movies just happen to intersect, like fucking Kung Fu Hustle.
Yeah, well, that was just a weird one.
It is, and
that's
I love
the
it.
point, but...
Yeah, fucking Truman Show as well.
Yep, and there's also Shin Godzilla, which
Hell yeah.
unfortunately ended up getting massively underrated because people were like, but where's the big, kaiju fights? And it's like, the monster was us all along.
Yeah, that's literally the point of that movie and the original. And it's pretty much what... Well, I'll cut myself off there. But anyone who subscribed to me, you will find some like related subject matter come tomorrow. On my channel, specifically.
We may be fairly intersected online, but yes, he does still make content on his own channel.
Yeah. I'm excited about this one, as well as for next month's, which I realize the next month's one is going to be particularly polarizing. I know I keep saying that, that's the name of the freaking show, but I think this one in particular is finally going to be the one that actually gets the torches and pitchforks out.
In case you guys don't know, I can't draw hands, but yes.
Well, who can?
That's just it. Right now, I don't think you're going to run into too many people wanting to pull up the, torches and pitchforks over that kind of opinion. You want to get people in the fucking setting everything on fire opinion, you should start talking politics. Which we kind of do every stream anyway, but,
Steve, that's your job.
Yes, it is my job to set the world on fire. At least that's what they keep saying Antifa is about.
Yeah, but yeah, I leave the politics to you and the last 30 minutes of every stream.
I prefer Godzilla's shin look. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna take a second to fucking yell at you. No, I'm not actually gonna yell at you, but here's the thing. I know that Shin Godzilla is not popular, and I understand why. It's not... It's got action in it, but then it's also got really long periods of literally zero action.
It's also highly divergent from literally any other origin story for the monster.
And this was the one that was directed by Hideki Anno, correct?
Hideki Anno and Shinji Iguchi. The latter of which being the visual director for the live-action Attack on Titan films.
So... And if you don't know who Hideki Anno is, creator of the Evangelion series.
Yeah. That fucker. And he never lets you forget it either with his repeated use of Ava music in the movie.
Uh-huh.
Also, bitch loves his purple.
Yep. He does. Anyway, so literally the point of the Shin Godzilla movies is in fact the fact that it is human beings taking too long to actually take action on something that is disastrous and is potentially going to have global effects.
Yeah, I will go on record as saying it is the best telling of the traditional Godzilla story ever captured on film. From a narrative standpoint, it is the best Godzilla movie.
And it's one of those, if you're paying attention to what is being criticized, it's not just, this action romp adventure. If you want that, you can go back to the 90s, and pretty much every disaster movie of the 90s will give you exactly that content. But if you're looking for something that actually has some kind of significant meaning, and I know that sounds really super hipstery, I get that too, but... My point is that this is a disaster movie, but it's not in the, as long as we, as long as we run away from the thing long enough and survive until the very end, then that's the end of it, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. Um, this movie is like the original Godzilla, calling out our tendency to ignore a problem until it becomes too big for us to actually handle.
Oh yes, very much so. And what I appreciate about like both the original and like Shin Godzilla are that they really don't hold back calling us the fuck out for specific things. Like with the original, it was the nuclear tests following the military. I forget like the term for when you establish a military presence in another country after a war.
Oh.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
know what you're kind of talking. And you're like you withdraw the military,
or basically you set up like military bases and stuff like after like the war has already ended.
Occupation.
So yeah, thank you, occupation. So yeah, following American military occupation of Japan and the American nuclear tests off the waters of Japan, which led to the radiation poisoning of several fishermen. This film was pretty much created in the wake of that as an expression of outrage, and it not only calls Americans the fuck out in that regard, but also the Japanese people themselves, because they just gotten so used to this shit by then.
I'm gonna cut you off. I'm sorry, because Skeeto just jumped in the chat and is saying literally what I tell you. Occupation. I guess technically the military person would know. That is one of those terms that they would know. But yes, and I'm teasing, by the way. I'm not. I'm not like. Of course, a military person knows about occupation. I mean, God, I'm not one of those.
Thanks, colonist. Anyway,
I'm not a hyper accusatory sort of person in that sense. I know.
The fuck you're not.
In that sense. Look, don't call me out like this, because never mind that I'm literally saying, I'm joking about it in this context. There are a lot of people within the military who are doing it for absolutely the wrong reasons.
Oh yeah.
But anyway.
But in any event, so like much in the same way the original Godzilla was made to call that bullshit out, Shin Godzilla was made to call out the piss poor bureaucratic handling of more recent natural disasters like the Fukushima power plant meltdown, which resulted from the prior earthquakes and tsunamis, which I think to date may be some of the worst like natural disasters ever captured on film. And because the thing is, like, what makes that shit even worse, Japan is, to my knowledge, like the one country in the entire world that prepares for earthquakes the most. They have like an annual earthquake preparation day or shit like that. You know, they have a bunch of technology that they use constantly to try and prepare for these things. And yet this fucking earthquake caused so much bullshit. And Japan's government was somehow just not able to handle it. Like,
they spent a lot of time deliberating over what to do without actually doing anything before it was far too much out of control.
Exactly, and that's what Shin Godzilla is basically one big allegory for.
Yep. And yet, once again, attached to relating to nuclear practices and all of that. So,
oh yeah.
I mean like, what else are you going to use Godzilla for but nuclear things? Ignore the entirety of all of the movies from, like, what, the 60s through the 90s?
Yeah. I mean, even some of the ones after that point fed on the marquee of camp, as it were.
But
because, like, the thing is, I pretty much focused on showing you the good ones, you know?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, one of these days I will take you through... You know, and that's not just a promise, that's a threat.
I was gonna say, I'm not gonna let you do that.
Yeah, I will take you at some point down the long and winding road of Godzilla camp, specifically from the 60s and 70s. Because that is a genre of entertainment in and of itself. Where Toho, the studio that created the property, had no idea what the fuck to do with Godzilla. They wanted to market him towards kids. They wanted to make him, you know, appealing to adults at the same time, and that resulted in some really trippy shit.
It's like Godzilla is the friend to children, but also destroying the entire, city.
Nah, that's Gamera.
That's also Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like, don't fuck with me. I have watched all of the movies that you've shown me, and you know that I can pick up this shit.
Oh, yes. Yes. I mean, Gamera is another one of those interesting things, which, again, made entirely for the purpose of trying to compete with Toho and Godzilla. But even so, I would argue has earned his place in the pantheon of classic kaiju. Like, specifically the 90s Gamera trilogy. And for anyone wondering, Gamera is basically... Imagine Godzilla, but it's a giant fucking turtle that eats fire and can fly.
Hi, Ragnar. Welcome. Yeah, Gamera is an interesting one. He took me through that trilogy that he's talking about.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's one of those instances where, like, again, they brought him back in that era to compete with Godzilla because Godzilla was once again at the height of its popularity in the 80s and 90s, starting with 1984 and going all the way through 1995.
So before we continue down this train, because we already derailed, I was making a comment and then I misspoke and we started talking about movies. I was going to say there was a particular moment, but what was the subject immediately before that?
I wish I could tell you.
Okay, because I was saying one of my favorite moments in something, and then I said movies instead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I think we were discussing, like, a lot of our mutually loved movies.
Right, but there was a specific... Oh, wait. There was a specific scene or something, like a moment that I wanted to point out, but... See, by the way, don't get ADHD, everyone, even though that's not something that you get. It's something that you inherit genetically. Because that's a hell of a fucking distraction right there.
Hell of a hand-me-down. But, yeah, I think I'd brought up some of our shared favorite movies, like Kung Fu Hustle, Clue. Oh, specifically, I think it was Being John Malkovich.
Friends! No, it's Friends. Okay, I was going to say one of my favorite moments... Okay, we've traced it back. We've fucking brought it back. Awesome. Okay, now I was talking about
the source of all.
I was talking about Friends, and one of my favorite Joey moments was when Chandler and Rachel were fighting over the cheesecake, and then they get one last cheesecake, and they end up dropping it on the floor, and they're literally on the floor in the middle of this hallway with their forks trying to eat the last of the fucking cheesecake, and Joey walks up, and he looks around almost disappointedly, and then he pulls out his own fork that he carries on his person and kneels down, sitting next to them and being like, all right, what are we eating?
Jesus.
From Godzilla to Friends. I think that's a natural progression. Both of them are disastrous.
I mean... And ironically enough, Godzilla is the less toxic of the two.
Well, yes and no. There are things about... I'll say this. I know that nostalgia also has a part to play in why I still like Friends. But you know that I call it out. I say that the most toxic part of it was the one character, and that's Ross.
Yeah, the thing that they made the central plot point of the entire series.
Well, one of them. But yes, the central plot point really genuinely was... all of the friends, but... Yeah,
the will they, won't they, in which it really should have been won't they.
And, like, if they hadn't... Because here's the thing. It would have been interesting to see some of that play out if it wasn't immediately predicated on the basis of him harassing her for getting a job that's genuinely within a field of interest for her because he felt emasculated, and also he just assumed that she was... cheating on him or about to cheat on him because there was also a guy at that particular institution that she was working at the time. If that had not been the thing that kicked off the will they or won't they, like, okay, obviously first couple of seasons was the missed connections. That's fine. You can have those moments of, like, he waited for her, but then she didn't notice, so then he moved on to someone else, and that's when she realized that he had feelings, like, or that she had feelings, and so on. That kind of thing is fine, but the second that you introduce the kind of obsessive stalkery boyfriend shit that was going on with Ross, that's when it became, okay, no, they definitely shouldn't.
God.
Because then that even led into, she said, we need to take a break. And then when she said that, he decided that to mean that they were breaking up, and immediately, like, this isn't even, like, a couple of weeks later, he immediately had sex with another woman. Like, you can't tell, like, you can say, oh, he was heartbroken, oh, he was drunk, and it's like, there are so many things that, yeah, but he didn't have to. And even when you're drunk, you don't really necessarily do things that you wouldn't do sober. But like in this particular case, it was literally the same fucking night. And by morning, she was like, "I don't want to take a break. I care about you. I think we can work this out." And he immediately lied to her about it. God. And so there were so many things. I thought it was going to be Naked Neighbor. That. Well, also, hi, M-Game. And hi, Zach. But that's just it. I have many strong opinions about Friends, and I feel like that's going to also be a potential future symbolism and lore discussion.
More than likely, yes.
Assuming that the world doesn't end before then, but you know.
I mean, I'd argue that it ended a long time ago, and we're just seeing the slow trickling effects.
You joke, but... Well, I mean, I don't know how much you're joking, but you kind of say it sarcastically enough, but... Either way, talking about, like, the way that Friends handles the nice guy trope. And... Because here's the thing, it was that kind of narrative through the 90s that created the incels of today. It was the idea that Ross was entitled to be with Rachel because he always had feelings for her, completely ignoring her agency, and it's one of those things where you can tell where the character was being written by perhaps a woman versus when the people who created the show were stepping up and saying, "No, Ross needs to be with Rachel." No, Portland, I didn't ask your opinion.
Look, we're smoggy enough, fucker. We don't need more.
Not love to see the world ending. I would love to see it. I do have another symbolism and lore in the works, and interestingly enough, I probably should have worked on that one a little faster. It would have been appropriate to release for the anniversary, the 5-year anniversary of fucking Undertale. But you guys will see probably soon enough. I think I might get to work on actually that next after I finish this Ballad of Lorelei thing. Yeah.
I mean, anyone who follows me on Twitter, and that's really kind of pushing it, but anyone who does by chance follow me on Twitter will already have caught my thoughts on the anniversary. And again, just to sum it up, it changed a lot for me, and I'm definitely grateful to it for coming out.
I owe a lot to it, too. I mean, let's be real, a lot of y'all who are in the audience right now found my channel because of Undertale, one way or another, whether it was my independent comic dubs before I was involved with Undertale the Musical or Undertale the Musical itself. A lot of folks were still here actually even before that because I tried to do the Let's Play thing. But, like, it was also just, it was an interesting social phenomenon to experience. Yeah. And I am glad to see, Toby Fox seeing his music realized by an orchestra,
That was fucking amazing.
I haven't actually watched it yet.
Oh, that's definitely something we'll have to watch together at some point.
Yeah. But that's just it. Like, any composer... Well, maybe not any composer, but a good chunk of composers would dream of having a full orchestra behind the stuff that they've composed. A good chunk of them would love to see it realized by more than just them putting stuff together in some music editing program. Like, actually seeing other people playing it, seeing the sheet music, and making it come to life. To have people vocalize, different parts of it. Put their singing to what they've written. I never kept up with Friends. I think the only thing I remember is Smelly Cat. Well, that's a good thing to take away from it, honestly. I will say that there was a lot about that series that was actually done really, really well, and other things that were done really, really poorly. I think, for example, that Phoebe unfortunately got the short end of the stick because they created a character who had tremendous trauma in her life. And they were like, oh, she's the quirky, weird one. And it's like, or maybe she's PTSD. And
I was happy to see that actually called out in the realistic trailers thing for Friends.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, we need to watch more of those, too. But
Yes.
anyway, like, literally the whole concept of Phoebe's character is, oh, she's weird, she's kooky. And it's like, she's trying to navigate a world that left her orphaned, living on the street, struggling to survive in increasingly dangerous situations throughout her life. And if she came out of that the other side, wanting to make the world a better place, out of the kindness of her heart, then holy shit, she should have been the fucking protagonist of the series.
And yet Joey was the one who got the spin-off.
If it wasn't for Undertale, I wouldn't have known a lot of talented folks and re-sparked my interest in making videos, yeah? I think I found you because you commented on one of my voice acting videos, and then I watched some Let's Plays. So, hey, glad to see you then. It's always nice to I mean, okay, I don't want to necessarily downplay, the impact that Undertale has had in terms of drawing people to my channel, but, like, I will say it's always nice when it's something that's not necessarily inherently tied with a big, huge fandom,
Yeah.
It's always nice to know that people came to me because they like something I'm doing and not just a character that they've associated with me. Which is not to say that I wasn't deeply flattered by the fact that a lot of people associated me with Toriel. And I'll say this, people associate me with her because there is a good chunk of me that just straight up, in fact, is Toriel. Yeah, boob comes first. Anyway, I do love the fact that I play her, and there's a lot of things that that I do have in common with the character. It's just, it's also nice to be recognized as being Lorelai and not Torielai.
Yeah.
Resparked. Sorry for the misspell. Hey, it's fine. Everyone has the things that regardless, I'm glad for the folks who stuck around even past the Undertale phase, the people who have continued to actually be at these streams on my channel, watching the stuff that I am creating, watching the streams that I'm doing, things like this. It's very flattering, and I'm happy for that too. Like I said, there's a reason why my next episode is actually going to be somewhat Undertale, my symbolism and lore episode is going to be Undertale related.
Yeah.
Because there are some important messages to pick apart about that game. I tried to get into Undertale, but sadly it passed me by. I'm kind of sad I missed that train because a lot of things came from it. Yeah. And a lot of things are still coming from it. There are a lot of people who are still producing a lot of really interesting content to this day based on, like, sorry, I was just double checking the actual script that I'm doing stuff with. Anyway, based on the even not just the game itself, but theories or AUs or things like that, like, the fact that this one fandom has sparked so much creativity from its fan base, it's helped by, for example, the fact that the creator understands fandom and encourages the creativity. He has, as long as you're not actually infringing on his ability to make money from this game, and let's be real, he made some fucking bucks on this game.
Oh, yes, and he's continued to make some fucking bucks on other things. Like, he's gone on to produce music for the newest Pokemon game, for example.
Which has some striking resemblance to other things that he's already orchestrated.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about A Baby Is You, or The Baby Is You. I'm having a baby and the baby is you. That's what it is. Don't look it up.
Jesus, like you say that, and the newest fucking tweet on my timeline is fucking Homestuck cosplay.
Don't come back. No,
There's no coming back from that.
I still toy around with. I kind of want to make more Undertale related stuff, but it's just like, let's see, what else do I have on my plate? Oh yeah, everything else.
Yeah.
So
God.
I want to do more stuff with that. I think that there's a lot of still, I mean, at least for me, untapped potential.
Oh yeah.
But I'm also going to say it's still technically a bandwagon that has itself passed. But so if I make something for it, that's how you know that I'm doing it because I love the fucking game and not just to hop on some fucking bandwagon for it. Let's see. How do I want to do this posture? And what's shocking is that Toby Fox made the game almost entirely by himself. With only the help of a few artists like Temmie. Honestly, here's the thing. I almost misread that as shocking that Toby Fox made the game almost entirely by accident was the thing that came to mind. And you know what? If you look at what he was saying about the coding,
Yeah. I was gonna say, looking at some characters, like fucking Aaron.
Oh my god, okay. But that was the reference to Equius, correct?
Yeah. And I'm fucking so sorry.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, that was another accident. Anyway. My word.
But it's a thing that there were a lot of good messages. Unfortunately, for a while, especially as it became popular, that the toxic side of fandom decided to come out and,
as it always inevitably does,
and affect the genuinely good messages that the game was trying to tell us. I've talked about it before, but things like the game actively teaches you what pacifism is. Obviously, they call it the pacifist route, but literally the idea is do what you can to try and reach out to people without resorting to violence. Try to understand a person and get through to them on terms that's actually going to mean something to them. Take the time to empathize with other people, and then from there, try to talk them down. Sometimes, someone will remove the ability to spare them or to show them mercy. Some people will remove your ability to not fight them. In which case, yes, you have to fight. Because pacifism is not never fighting. It's about exhausting every other option except for it. And I'm sorry, I'm just getting the... Homestuck was my thing. I never got into a fandom as much as that one. I think it was the only one I considered actually getting into cosplay for. And then Ragnar, that was Endgame before, by the way, for the post-recording here. Ragnar, that unfortunately is a side that will eventually appear in every fandom. Yeah, where was my train of thought before I derailed myself?
That's a good question. Wish I had an answer for you.
Well, what was I literally saying?
You're basically talking about how, the toxic part of the Undertale fandom coming out, and
well,
how I...
Oh, the message of pacifism, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, things like Asgore literally destroying the mercy button so that you were forced to fight him. That was him literally using the, nope, you can't do that. You're not going to be able to spare me in this. I'm not going to let you, this is literally not an option. And that's obviously a metaphor, and using the game mechanics to do this metaphor, but also just literally, yeah, or not literally, but figuratively, yeah, sometimes people are going to remove the ability to fight them. And it's good to think sympathetically. It's important to think sympathetically. And yet, look at what the game does. The second that you have the option to spare him, it rewards that. Eventually, once you are able to get someone past the thing that's making them hurt so much that they want to do harm to other people, you can, once they are no longer a threat, choose to stop. it is an option to stop. It is an option to stop being violent, to stop fighting. And in those moments, it really is a true test, a real showing of your character if you choose mercy. If you choose mercy. Which is a simpler way of saying it, but then I decided to expand on it. So it literally... And then the same thing happens with the Omega Flowey fight. I would say spoilers, but it's been out for 5 years, and if you are anywhere online, I sincerely doubt you have not somehow encountered Undertale.
Yeah.
But the fight with Omega Flowey is another example of that. You can't spare him because he literally doesn't give you any option to do so. The only option you are literally given in the moment is fight.
Yeah.
And so, fight you do. And that's another thing where you have to fight until you effectively destroy him. And he tries to undermine that repeatedly. He uses, again, the limitations of the interface on your end to basically cheat continuously.
Yeah.
Which he does also later, but for different reasons. He uses everything he can to try and upend you, and it's only because of his own hubris that as long as you're able to endure past a certain point, that he's able to be stopped. And when that happens, what are you taken to? You're taken to a screen where you can offer him mercy. And he fights it every single way. He responds to the repeated attempts to spare him by starting to get angry, threatening, getting angrier and angrier, and increasingly manic and more threatening. Yeah. But then, after a certain point, he's like, why? Why would you do this? I don't understand. I can't understand this. I've been terrible to you. You should kill me. I'm a threat. And instead you show him, that's not the only option. And it's so breaking of his worldview at that point that he retreats. Mm-hmm. And obviously it sparks a whole new fight. But again, showing once you get to understand people, literally the whole Asriel fight, is literally a metaphor for if you take the time to get to know someone and empathize with what they're going through, you can reach through to them, at least as best as you can. It's worth the effort to try. But in their moments of in their low moments, when they're overcome by their own personal demons, knowing who they are and reminding them of the good things that they might not in themselves be able to see in that moment. And you might be able to bring them out. And the same applied to Asriel. The parts of himself that he chose to forget, or that he forgot over time.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yep. So, the messages of Homestuck, that too, but also Undertale. Look, they're kind of interchangeable in some ways. It's all kind of the same fandom. I also read Homestuck on the screen, which is why I said Homestuck. I was looking at the chat here. God. Anyway, the messages of Undertale are actually really, really good. And even in the case of if you do the genocide path, when you're literally killing everyone, it still has the important messages to you in terms of this is what happens when you choose to make the world a darker place. It gets darker. Big surprise, right? But it's... Sorry, I'm also like, how do I draw this thing? It shows you what happens when you make the world a bleaker place. And eventually it shows that you lose control of yourself. You find yourself overtaken by this very thing that you technically chose to create within yourself, but after a certain point, the power will get taken away from you, and you will be caught up in an endless cycle of having to fight, having to kill, having to do this thing. You will be compelled to do it. Your choices will be further taken from you. You will get to know no one. The world will be an empty, hollow world of data. Numbers that increase the more you do certain things. I mean, it's also a commentary on the way that we treat video games and how it kind of also desensitizes us to violence as it because it tends to be the default form of gameplay.
Yeah.
I'm back. My connection blew up for a moment. You know what path doesn't get enough recognition? The neutral route with all of its alternative endings, which leads to alternate universes. That's also true. And that is also important to take into account. The neutral options are there. I think we tend to sway one more or the other because both the genocide and the pacifist routes tend to have more overall, tend to have more overall presence, and they have the more satisfying conclusions because you pushed things to their extremes. But yeah, the neutral routes where you see things like, Metaton becoming king or Papyrus or any of the number of options that are available in the game to complete depending on what your choices are, who you choose to kill, who you choose to spare, and all of that stuff. It is interesting to pursue and absolutely worth. It's just, unfortunately, sometimes there's only so many times that someone is willing to replay a game like that. And if you want to get kind of the core story, then it's kind of important. I think that the pacifism and genocide routes are the most important in that regard, but by no means are they the only valid experience in the game. It's just, unless you literally want to make your life nothing but Undertale, doing the 9 hours of gameplay or however 6 hours, whatever it is, depending on how long it takes you, is very time consuming, and not everyone has the time to do that. But it's still worth seeing.
Yeah, and I'll also say, because I've mentioned this before, and I know some people have some different opinions on it, is like, for as much as I love the game, I feel like Undertale is one of, if not the worst game to do Let's Plays of, specifically because of the culture that sort of comes with Let's Play audiences, where if you find yourself playing through a game with multiple paths, there will always be people who want to see other people experience a specific set of experiences or things that they went through. So they'll
yell at you.
Yeah, exactly. They'll get very passionate about what you should or should not do in a game where the main crux of it is that it is your choice. And so I feel like because of the inherent nature of Undertale's structure, it's really not a great thing to do Let's Plays of, because you will always have a legion of backseat drivers, as it were.
I will say, I mean, I did my own, Let's Play series of it, but
yeah,
it was still important to me to do it at the time. I did experience it largely blind. I did also know some things in advance, which is why I was like, okay, I've seen a few things with this and I want to experience the rest. There are some instances where I knew something ahead of time, but that's just it, is that I didn't know the connecting path to get there, which is why you kind of want to avoid spoilers in video games anyways, because if you know what's supposed to happen, but you don't know how to get there, you might try to trigger it without actually having the active flags in the game. Ragnar said the pacifist and genocide routes have one unique ending, while the neutrals are all kind of different. Too bad the fandom don't take them too much into consideration, with the exception of Horror Tale and that Flash game, I don't remember the title. The backseat gaming was and is insane. Yep, that's just it. I mean, you're going to get that with just about every gaming stream. You're going to get that with every gaming channel that shows gameplay of some kind, which tends to be streams nowadays. But it's still a game that's worth exploring and worth, experiencing. And yeah, the neutral paths are interesting to look at, but it is... I do think that the crux of it is in the pacifist and genocide endings, because they both show the extremes of the way that we treat video games, the way that we take for granted what our choices are in video games, and the way that we treat each other, and little ways that we can choose how to affect our own behavior in such a way that we can either choose to be kinder, or the consequences of what happens when we're not kinder to one another.
Yeah.
Because you really can't have it both ways. You can't be, bloodthirsty and take away the agency of other people without also making the world a darker, bleaker place where you stop having control in the situation.
Yeah.
If you actively try, I mean, again, it starts off with, a lot of people make the excuse, and it's like, well, you can't really blame Frisk for going after all of these people attacking them, because it's like, they come in and they're violent and they do things that hurt Frisk. And like, yeah, it's true. It's hard to figure out how to deal with a situation where someone comes into your life and introduces conflict and pain. It is hard to deal with the intensity of someone else's emotions, and that's what the game explicitly tells you is happening. Yeah. Monsters express their emotions through these bullets that they share between each other, and humans are not really equipped to deal with that, which is why it hurts. And that's why it's your soul that ends up breaking in the resulting bullet hell storm that you get hit with each time. When someone comes at you and their intensity hurts you, naturally you want to make it stop. Naturally you want to fight them off so that you are defending yourself from that pain. And it's a justified beginning that you defend yourself by fighting, but after a certain point, the game makes it clear. And I will say this, just killing all of the enemies will not get you, all of the enemies that you encounter just casually, it will not get you the genocide ending. The way that you get the genocide ending is when you grind in an area so long that you literally kill all of the potential opponents in that area. And when you do that, that's when you start seeing you are not just killing, you are doing it to the point of committing a genocide. You are intentionally killing everyone that you can. See, again, this game makes the distinction between defending yourself and actively going out of your way to perpetuate more violence that doesn't even need to happen, because you'll even notice the more you do it throughout the game, the less likely the monsters are to attack you. It takes longer and longer in between encounters because they're not as willing to jump in and get themselves killed by you. Mm-hmm. So the game reflects in its coding exactly why this path is in itself kind of integral to understanding the point. It's not just, oh, how dare it punish me for defending myself. And it's like, well, you're not defending yourself at that point. You are actively exterminating. You've decided that you hate all of monster kind. Either whether it's in character you've decided this, or whether you, as the player, have cognitively decided, I'm just going to kill everyone to see what happens. And the game calls you out. Flowey literally says that that's what he did for the longest time. Mm-hmm. He did experiments to see what he could get away with.
Yeah, and he goes a step further by calling out the people who aren't brave enough to do it themselves, so they watch other people do it.
And so they watch either Let's Play streamers or, say, their friends playing it. Alright, so I was pulled to heck and back by the internet for Undertale. While the spoilers made me think, well, maybe I should try it, but by the time I got a job and money, I will say that there's still definitely a strong Undertale fandom going on endgame. Oh, yeah. Not to mention when you're completely alone, when everything is after you try to take away your soul. Also, the game can even let you spare the monsters after hitting them a few times without even acting. So in a certain way, the responsibility of killing or not a monster is ours. Yes, that's just it. You can beat them into submission and then still spare them. It's not great. There are a lot of asshole things that you can do, but the game explicitly only puts you on the genocide path if you exterminate everyone in an area. And when you choose to kill in brutal ways, like they get increasingly brutal, to the point where, like, you get to the Metaton fight, and it's one hit.
Yeah.
And it's you're at this point, your determination to kill things is so strong that it doesn't matter what these characters do. They're not going to be able to override the player's thirst for dust, I guess. Because I can't say thirst for blood, but you know what I mean. Yeah. They can't comprehend someone that determined to kill. And so they're not ever going to be prepared for someone who is strong enough to do that. And I will say, in-universe, it makes sense that the monsters were terrified of humans because they possessed that unique ability to shut off their compassion for one another and to be able to cause so much hurt and so much mayhem. That's literally something that, again, is called out in the game if you pay attention to what's going on. So the genocide path is, I can't do it myself, and that's literally pretty much only for one reason. I can't say that I have a moral quandary against killing everyone, because I do, but also it's one of those, to see that path and see the story that it tells us is important. But I cannot do the Sans fight. I mean, if you watched my recent streaming, a year ago, but you know what I mean. If you saw that stream for me, that stream series, you saw how much I struggled with the Asgore fight. And that's easier than the Sans fight. You may do the same thing over and over again in the Sans fight, but and the pattern may be identical each time, but the point is, what I'm saying is I can't do that. But yeah, when you get to the Sans fight, I love that subversion. Because a lot of people by this point have been spoiled to the fact that Sans is actually this super badass who's quietly observing the situation. But when you were first experiencing the game, and you only saw Sans up at that point, if you played through on a neutral or a pacifist route, you mostly only saw Sans as the comedy side character that plays off of Papyrus, and he's lazy, he doesn't stand up to do anything, and then in that moment he shows exactly what kind of character he is. He's the person who sleeps so much so that he can have as much HP over his limit as possible.
Yeah.
He sleeps so much so that he can be equipped for when you do what you inevitably do, because he was prepared for that. That's just it. Yeah. He knew that it was something that was going to happen because there was an anomaly where time kept looping over and over and over again. And he's not talking to Frisk. He's not talking to Kara. He is talking to you, the player, saying you are the reason why that's happening, isn't it? I can't do the genocide path because of the previous run. I come to care about the characters and their personalities. That's true too. The only thing closer to the genocide path was playing the bad time simulator on the web.
Yeah.
Which I can't, again, I do not have the reflexes to be able to play a game like that. And before everyone's like, oh no, you just need some time to get used to it. And it's yeah, that's true for most people, but I literally do not have the reflexes to do it. I can do it a million times, but I'm not going to get any better at doing it. If you want to see that, see my fucking Jevil fight when I did Deltarune. I tried. I tried for hours, in fact, to try and get that one fight taken care of, and I couldn't do it. So, I don't have the ability to do that fight, and that's my limitation, and I recognize it. It's not out of cowardice that I'm not trying to see that path. I guess it's a form of cowardice. I know I can't do it, so I don't do it. I don't want to do it, and I'm not so invested in killing everyone to see a story that I can experience in other ways. To put myself through the struggle and the stress of trying to fight Sans. But it was genuinely a shock back in the day because this was a character that you didn't expect to see like that. And again, it goes to show that you can't always tell from a surface understanding what someone is like until they take an action that you were not expecting them to take. And I made her jaw way too defined. Anyway, Undertale is a fantastic game. Go play it if you haven't already.
Yeah.
If you're here listening to me talk about it, I kind of hope that you have already, in fact, played it. But
Same for Deltarune.
Deltarune is a good game. I'm looking forward to seeing more installments of that.
Hell yeah.
If you've actually seen the Undertale.com that Toby Fox was able to actually get off the ground, he talks about some of the reasons why it has been delayed as much as it has, including the fact that he's been struggling with pain with his wrist, which has made it difficult for a lot of the things that are necessary for creating a game, as it turns out.
Yeah.
He's been doing his best, but he does need to put together a team, which apparently he has opened up some of the things that he needs help with. So if you go to Undertale.com and you want to try and help with making Deltarune happen, there are some options there. You should preferably have some experience with the game making industry. But, you know, or with the gaming industry. Coding is going to be a huge help, especially for this motherfucker who accidentally coded a game into existence. Like, I'm not even joking. He admitted that to himself, that a lot of it was, like, accidents that he managed to make work. That's way too big of a lip. Anyway. The only thing closer to it, yeah, so... Hey, Gojira.
Yeah.
I'm good at drawing people, okay? Fuck you. I'm not directing that. I'm directing that at myself, let's be real. I'm telling myself, fuck you. Let's see. But yeah, I guess it's a good time to talk about Undertale around the 5-year anniversary mark. I mean, it's a little bit late technically, but, you know. There's a lot to be said about the game. Obviously, there's plenty to pick apart about it. People have been analyzing it for the entirety of these 5 years, and they're still finding new things about this game to appreciate.
Yeah.
Which is so cool to see. How are we all today? Well, we are.
Yeah.
That's kind of it, really. I'm talking about Undertale and kind of expressing, you know, my fondness for it and how important it is, the important messages that are in the game, and why it's important to explore as many of the paths as you have the time to dedicate to it. But it is an excellent demonstration of behaviors that I think that we have sadly languished in as of recent. The skill to choose, to know when to spare someone, how to fight in a way that's not, you know, murder as the end game of it, you know? Hey everyone, sorry I'm late people, hi Phoenix. Hello, welcome to the stream. I'm doing some art stuff while also apparently talking about Undertale, at least for now. I was gonna see about potentially moving the subject off of it, not because I don't enjoy talking about Undertale, clearly I do.
But yeah, I was even just going to say that this year has been a sort of unfortunate, compounded example of that notion of us just forgetting the bare bones fucking essentials of mercy. And I think I saw this this fucking post on Tumblr earlier today where without going into spoilers, it has the main villain from I'm trying to remember the name of that one, like, the DC comic and movie, where it's not like the main superhero, like
Punisher?
No, but it's like sort of like this spin-off, one-off thing where one of the characters is Rorschach and the other is like the comedian. Dr. Manhattan is one of the main guys in there.
The Watchmen?
Watchmen, thank you. But yeah, it has like the main villain from Watchmen, and I will unite the people of the world by creating a common threat. So frightening, will be forced to unite in order to overcome it. And then just a personified 2020 just comes over and starts laughing in his fucking face.
Laughing maniacally because, unfortunately, when presented with disasters that should presumably unite the entire human race, our response to it has been to go, I guess, fuck that. What if instead we just accelerated our death? Yeah. I say that casually. I will say that I apologize for being so flippant about it. I think that it's really easy to get caught up into the doom and gloom of everything that's going on. I do personally believe in continuing to hope for a better future. Despite the odds against that at this point. I still refuse to be the person who gives up and lets the momentum carry it to that position. It may inevitably end up that way, but even if it does, even if it does end up exactly in that way, I'm not going to be the thing that lets it slide into existence, you know? I love people in the chat. Watchmen. Watchmen? Watchmen.
Yeah.
Yes.
God. Yeah, how many times this stream already have we just had, like, the viewers trying to compensate for my piss poor memory?
Hey, how many times have I been making you make up for my piss poor memory?
Fair.
So. Let's see.
God.
But yeah, life be as it do sometimes.
Sometimes.
Anyway, let's see. Sorry, I was just checking something real quick. Discord be weird sometimes. Anyway. Life is weird, and I try not to let the gravity of the situation pull me down too much, but I will say there is a certain degree of this is kind of fucked up beyond all recognition at this point.
Yeah.
But there's still stuff that we can do to make it better.
Yeah.
Maybe not fix everything, but there's things that we can do to make it better. In case it goes without saying, for those of you who are in fact old enough to vote, be sure to make sure that you're registered, double check to make sure that you are registered, and try to request your ballots, your mail-in ballots now, because please don't go to the actual voting facilities on the day of. First of all, you are likely to run into resistance. There has been a lot of encouragement for violence, especially on the right side, the right party side. So I don't mean incorrect.
Yeah.
I mean, right-wing party encouragement to incite violence and to be watchdogs over the polling places to make sure that the people who are coming in to vote are going to vote for Trump. So my suggestion is to do it in mail-in, and also because there's a pandemic and I don't want you guys to get sick.
Also, a third of the country is on fire.
There's that too. Don't put yourself in a fire to go vote. We're already in a political fire.
Yeah.
My state is all vote by mail. That's good. I always forget about delays between streamer and listener. What do I have? Why have the time to watch Watchmen? I don't regret the pun. I encourage people to pick up their ability to vote and to request their ballots and all of that stuff. It is vitally important that we get involved in this election.
Yeah.
Also, don't buy the QAnon bullshit. I didn't know what the fuck that was until recently. I was hearing it. I was hearing that it was largely, very conspiracy oriented and all of that. And then I finally actually learned what it is. And I was like, this is literally the fucking blood libel bullshit that they were pulling ages and ages ago. And we have fucking debunked, and they're bringing it back. But again, I suppose I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah. I'm in the unfortunate mindset of not being surprised by any of the horrible things that have happened over the past 4 years.
I will, and I've said this to you before as well. It's not a matter of being surprised. A lot of us have been seeing exactly this outcome for years. I'm not surprised to see what's going on. I am not surprised to see the state of things. I am not surprised to see that Trump has inevitably done the exact same thing that we were all predicting years ago that everyone called hyperbole and overreacting. And, you're just going to label everyone who disagrees with you as a Nazi. And it's like, okay, but anyway. It's easy to get caught up into how overwhelming a lot of this is. And I genuinely think that I can't draw hands. Also, I do genuinely think that it is important to try and persist in having hope for the future. But it is hard to conjure that at all times. It is exhausting to try and hope when so many things keep cropping up to kind of drain it away. So I deal with it the way that I have dealt with everything my entire life, by making sarcastic and snarky remarks and speaking in somewhat hyperbole, and the whole "I crave death" thing, which again is a reflection of what was going on in the early 19 teens and into the 1920s, through the 1920s, in fact.
Yeah.
See, I agree with Kitty. Yes, I do too. The cat having loud opinions, I absolutely agree with that. Also, folks, just as a general reminder, don't eat things that you're allergic to. I don't care how delicious they are. I say this being the idiot who ate something that I was allergic to because I was just like, well, but maybe this will be fine. I'm dealing with the consequences of that, making me still nauseated a whole day.
This time.
I am a whole 12 hours after having last eaten the thing that I'm allergic to, and I'm still feeling the effects of it. So
Joy.
I tried to avoid legumes, but I was like, I still have hummus. And hummus is one of my favorite foods. Surely if I have a little, I'll be okay. And I'm like, now I'm feeling the consequences of that. I am feeling the consequences of my hubris. So,
I mean, like, in your defense, it's easier these days to list the things you're not allergic to. So.
Not really. The problem is that the things that I'm allergic to are very common ingredients in a lot of different foods.
Yeah.
I'm trying hard to not give in to hating people and keep hoping for a good thing about humanity. It just feels tough, especially when bad things going on. Yep. And that's the thing, is that there's always going to be justification for hating one another. There's always going to be some mistake that we have made, some slight that we have done to one another that will justify, in the end, taking up some way to... And again, this goes back to Undertale in a weird way, but it's really easy to fall into the brain pattern of, it's easy to hate. It's the easier solution because it simplifies everything. Life is easier when you can turn around, like, there's less emotional energy that's actually involved in coming to hate someone for the things that they are doing that's hurting you, than it is to actually take the time to invest, okay, why are they doing this? Now, I will say, sometimes the answer literally is they're hurting you because they can. There are some assholes out there that are, in fact, exactly like that. And at a certain point, you really can't empathize with them. You can't empathize them out of being terrible, awful people. They want to hurt you, and that's going to always be their goal. And it doesn't matter if you reach out to them. It doesn't matter if you explain, this is exactly why you're wrong, or here's what you're missing when you talk about these things. This is information and stuff that you're not utilizing. Here, let me explain to you what's going on. They're not going to listen because they don't care. Hate sounds like too much effort. I got better things to do. It's okay. Yeah, I'm allergic. I'm lucky not to be allergic to anything. My mom recently got allergic to shellfish. Like, yeah, allergies can develop later in life. So those of you who may not be allergic to something now, be on the watch and check signs that you might be allergic to something, especially common allergies, things like, peanuts and legumes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hate is a lot of energy, but it's a simplistic mental energy. Like, there's a lot of emotional energy that gets expended in hating someone, but when you don't actually have to do the mental work of, like, okay, but why is this happening, though? It's a lot simpler. It is a simpler life to be like, nope, it's all bad. And it's tempting. There's a lot of temptation in the world to just be like, no, it's all bad. I don't want to deal with it anymore. No one wants to deal with it. It's scary, and a lot of people are seeing extremism everywhere. Some of it is actual extremism, and then there's the people who are taking very selective information to perpetuate the idea that, quote-unquote, both sides are bad. Or both sides of the issue are as bad as each other. And a lot of it is misinformation or misconstrued information. I still love the one that I keep seeing, which is the idea that Antifa is being backed by George Soros. Like, I had no idea who the fuck George Soros even was, and I still don't fully know who the fuck he is. I did see that apparently he backed some political stuff going on in Florida, I guess? Or if it's not Florida, I think that he backed some ways to try and get some of the corruption in politics out, and so people are like, well, he's someone with a lot of money who's backing things that support some of this ideology, so clearly he is the one who is funding a terrorist group to seed dissent and cause problems and property damage and stuff like that. And I'm like, if this entire movement was being funded by George Soros, where the fuck is my check? I actually find hate to be easy and not much effort. I don't know about energy-wise, but action-wise, hate seems easy. Who the fuck is George? Yeah, like, that's just it. I still don't know much about him, outside of that this is the person that they are pinning the idea that everyone is being funded by. And it's like, they're like, why do they have all of these weapons? How are they staying there, night after night? And it's like, okay, they didn't start out with weapons, and they really still aren't using weapons. The only thing that they are, quote-unquote, arming themselves with is shields and protective gear. The only weapons that they've had are things like fireworks and things that have been largely just used in retaliation to brutality. They started these protests completely unarmed, no shields, no protection whatsoever, and they were immediately slammed down with all of the riot suppression that they didn't actually deserve. So after not being chased out by that, they adapted. They formed, you organize over time. That's how all military strategy started, is because you had to figure it out in the heat of battle. You had to figure out what worked. They are not organized in the sense of one central person telling them what to do. They are organizing by virtue of spending night after night after night being attacked, being hurt, being injured, and in some cases being killed. Now, are there bad actors within every movement? Yes. When you have a bunch of people with high tension and high anger and high frustration, and especially compounded with things like economic collapse and pandemic, you're going to get people who are angry and want to, quote-unquote, do something about it, and very often the do something about it is do something violent. And the doing something violent option can be the individuals who may ideologically line themselves with people who are members of Antifa, but they have taken it upon themselves to enact some sort of vigilante justice. Hello, Yoshi. Welcome to this discussion. This is a rather intense one.
I mean, when isn't it?
Yeah, well, it can be lighthearted. Earlier we were talking about Undertale and all. I guess it's been kind of a heavier kind of conversation today, I suppose, but anyway. There's always going to be bad actors. There's always going to be people who do something out of line. You're always going to run into individuals that are going to do something that makes the whole look bad. But it depends on what the actual ideology of the group is. And some people may argue, well, it also depends on what the actions are, and that is true. And a lot of people are focusing on things like, well, they're burning buildings, they're looting. It's like that's ignoring that they ignored decades of genuinely, completely peaceful protests. They ignored that the civil rights movement of the 60s was actually pretty violent. That's why it worked. There were the peaceful demonstrations, but then there were also the ones where they took to the streets and they refused to be settled down. I have to leave the stream. My connection is kind of bad today, and I've had to... All right, have a good night, Ragnar. It's been good having you. That was about Undertale. It was originally. We've kind of technically moved on, Yoshi.
I mean, it all comes back to garbage. That's basically the message here. There's garbage people and everything you touch. The main message we're trying to get across is rise above the garbage.
But if the ideology is I want to get rid of people who disagree with me to the point of hiding them away, killing them, performing unwanted hysterectomies on a group of them, that's a fucking problem. Anyway, it's when the ideology in itself is literally, I am superior to these other people by virtue of my whiteness or by virtue of my connection with the current state of authority. It's the assuming moral superiority because you have other people who agree with you. And it's been a long time coming. And unfortunately, a lot of they're doing a violence, they are doing rioting, and it's like, yeah, some people are rioting. In most instances, 90% of the protests in the Black Lives Matter movement have been entirely peaceful. And there's always going to be the individuals who do shit that is violent. You're going to have the individuals who do things like destroy property. And does it suck when a small business owner ends up in the crossfire, I guess literally, as a result of all of this? Yes. I am not a person who likes violence. I don't. And I'm not going to justify it. And I know that's like what it sounds like what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that violence done to property is okay. But if the alternative is that we continue to ignore the things that they're protesting, if we continue to ignore systemic abuse, if we continue to ignore that not everyone has the opportunity to open those businesses in the first place, never mind to benefit from them, if we continue to ignore the things that are literally killing people, not even just out on the streets, but in their own homes by the state of authority that we all expect to protect us, then what do we expect to happen if we break the social contract? There was literally a woman, unfortunately her name escapes me, but there is a video out there that talks about this. I hate that I don't remember her name off the top of my head, and for that which I do genuinely apologize, but it's a black woman who is speaking to the experience of black people where they don't get to experience the American dream. Individuals might be able to get to that point, but if they have to face being killed for living their life, if they can't go jogging without a woman throwing glass at them, if they can't live their life and they play by their moral code, they play by the rules and still find themselves getting killed doing nothing wrong, regardless of if they do a minor thing wrong and end up facing execution as a result of that, then what reason does anyone have to agree to the system that will kill them no matter what? Moral superiority through having money, resources, and power, it makes me sick. Same. I do not advocate violence. I really, really strongly wish that we did not have things the way that they were, and there is a part of me that 20 years ago, if I saw the kind of stuff that some of the rioters, some of the protesters, but it's really the rioters, specifically the rioters that are setting things on fire, they are part of the protests in their own way. Diversity of tactics is literally part of protest tactics as a whole. The violence of these individuals who are doing these particular things against property, for the most part, with only the occasional individual who are taking it against human lives. Hi, red as tomato! Foxed!
Uh-oh, y'all, we've been foxed.
Oh, thank goodness that you've been a foxed. Anyway,
God.
If I can't condemn people who know that they're never going to win in this game, because it's a game that's being played on them, and it's a lethal one, because they're always going to lose, and every time they lose, they're going to face death. And I can't expect anyone who has to deal with that as their daily experience. They have to deal with that paranoia, that fear, that hurt, and that certainty that people hate them for existing. Like, I can only imagine to a degree. And I say this, the only overlap I have with any of that is, well, one, I am a woman, and I experience hatred for being a woman. And it's not even overt hatred like, fuck you for being a woman, but even things like, women aren't good at math, or women aren't good at science, or women are only good for being girlfriend, or, wife, or so on and so forth. These small little ways that it kind of erodes at your sense of humanity. And also as a fat woman, where there's an intersect there, where as a fat woman, I experience, how dare you not be attractive to me. And hi, Zach. Where I have lived pretty much every day of my life since childhood, knowing for certain that the world around me hated me for existing. They hated me so much that they wanted me to endure terrible things to conform to, terrible, painful things, even to the point of surgery, mutilating myself for the sake of looking attractive or making them feel better about my being in their world. And that is one fraction of what black people in this country have had to deal with since the inception of the United States, and even before then. In the colonies of this continent before, we became a country the way that it is, it's always been that way. It's 400 fucking years of this bullshit, and it hasn't changed. Sometimes it eases up. Sometimes they're able to force the issue back. Sometimes we pretend like we've agreed all along that it's correct to be not racist and not prejudiced. There are periods of times, like you look through, the 90s, which was a particularly progressive period, where bad things were still happening, but we were trying to enact social change during that time. But it's always been there, it's always been lingering in the background, and black people have still died as a result of people not paying attention, of white people in particular, but just as in general, our mainstream media not focusing on this issue for the longest time. So, of course, we only see what's going on when they finally do something like burning buildings, when they do take to the streets in huge numbers, when they do something that ends up impacting our daily life in such a way that it finally makes the news because it's so sensational. It's the only time we hear it. And of course, the reaction to seeing people only now reacting with violence to the same violence that they have been enduring for centuries, the reaction is going to look like they're just spontaneously being violent, that they're just attacking America, that they're attacking the people as a whole. Of course, that's what it's looked like if you have not seen what led up to this point. I feel very passionately about this, obviously. I care about this. It is something that fills me with dread, and it fills me with shame. And I don't mean shame for being a white person. I am ashamed that being a white person means that I have been complicit in this. I didn't even realize the kind of biases that I had until I started getting older and I got myself involved in online communities with people whose voices have been traditionally squashed because of what we choose to ignore. I am ashamed that I have ever contributed to that kind of environment because of my sheltered upbringing in some cases. I am not ashamed of being a white person, but I am ashamed of the culture that has privileged me over a person of color. And I'm ashamed that we are getting to this point, that only now are people seeing it and they've decided that what they see is only the violence and not the discrimination and not the pain and not the daily experience for a group of people in this country that have never truly been given the opportunity to succeed. And the small gains that they have made have always been met with resistance every fucking step of the way. I just hope you and everyone else stays as safe as possible over there. I agree. And I try to stay safe, obviously, but there's only so much that you can do to stay safe. And I can't physically put myself out there on the street. I can't. I am physically disabled. I am psychologically disabled in some ways. I have some mental illnesses that make it a lot more difficult to do certain tasks. Mostly related to depression and ADHD, which is a neurological condition, which is so much fun, guys. The only thing that I really can do is speak out about it. All I can do is put my voice out there and say these things and speak with passion and try to explain as best I can why we need to examine this situation. And I believe that compassion needs to happen. I believe that we need to start putting down the tension, the aggression, why we need to find a way to get to the point where we are no longer enacting violence upon one another. We are not bringing this to the surface, that we are not hating by virtue of it being the easier path to understanding the flaws that we all experience as human beings. We need to find a better way. We have not been doing the better way, and the people who suffer violence are using the only thing that we as a country have ever given them as a tool, which is further violence. I hate violence. I really do. And I don't advocate for it. But if you have no other choice, what do any of us really expect? And I don't mean that in the sense of, well, what do you expect? This person shot and killed 2 people in this situation because they're constantly attacking buildings. They have made it up into as if Portland is always constantly burning. The only time I've actually seen Portland burning is when the fucking wildfires, which were started by a gender reveal party, BT dubs. Hey, Griffin!
Down in California, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, Griffin, is Portland still standing?
Well, that depends on your definition, but it's pretty much cloaked in the whole big-ass blanket of smoke, and the air is so toxic that I literally am not allowed to go to work because of it, but other than that, yeah.
But was this because of the Antifa presence in the streets?
Honestly, I'd say Antifa were the ones keeping things as stable as they were up until this point.
I mean, obviously, we speak from violence. From violence, of course, we speak from violence. We speak from bias here. But I will even say, was the entirety of Portland burning to the ground as a result of Antifa?
Not really. I mean, the only things that resulted from that were a couple dumpster fires.
Someone who lives there is saying this. First-hand experience. Now, you can always take that as propaganda, of course. Everything can be manufactured. But Griffin lives there. And he lives in Portland, and amazingly enough, it is still standing. In fact, he was able to go about his daily business. I'm speaking for you, and I apologize. But my
It's nothing new.
My point in all of this being, Portland was not under siege the way that it's been portrayed in the media. And it certainly wasn't under siege from Antifa.
No, it was under siege by the government.
Don't kill, but don't let yourself be killed. Agreed, Zach. An important lesson from Undertale.
And I actually hate to interrupt, but as I mentioned previously, I actually do have to get back to working on something, so I'm going to have to hop off here.
Oh, I see how it is. I see how you be. Anyway, I thank you for joining for as long as you did, Griffin, and I do hope that you're able to get that thing done that you want to get done. Yeah. I look forward to seeing it. Go ahead and check out, by the way, Cybernetic Pink Eye, the channel on YouTube. You can easily Google it or find the link, usually in my friends part on my channel. There's going to be a new upload coming soon, and it's worth watching. Support my friend, everyone.
Thank you. But yeah, I will leave you to your soapbox.
Yes, thank you. Have a good editing period, because we'll probably be talking later tonight.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Later.
So, just continuing on with my fucking soapbox rant. It's a complicated, nuanced situation. And of course people are like, oh, you're talking about nuance. I don't want to talk about nuance. There's active shit. Yes, there is active shit. And the only way to undo it is to look at and examine the nuance. The only way to address what's been going on is to look at the complicated, tiny things that build up the foundation into the state that we are currently in. And I obviously care very passionately about the subject. I have been carrying on about this for quite some time, this entire stream. I think that it is vitally important that we do try to do what we can to be kinder. And I don't mean be kind to the extent of don't be kind to the extent of losing yourself in the mix, But be kind to other people, be compassionate, be willing to stand your ground when it's necessary to do so. But don't... It's complicated. I say when it's complicated, it's because I don't know the solution. I am not the person who can go in and point to where we can stand up in society to make the violence stop, to fix the way that the system has disadvantaged members within the community, within our country. I don't know the solution to genuinely make it change. The only thing that I know is do what we can to find the small little threads that we can weave back together again into a cohesive social structure. We need to find a way to get through to each other. Regardless of where we stand, we need to find the mutual space where we are scared, where we are hurt, and take care of the anger that we've been dealing with in a productive way. I don't want violence in the streets, but if you give someone no option but to do that, there's unfortunately not much choice left. I want to give people more options. And that's why I take to getting on streams, why I take to talking to people, both through social media as well as through this. This is why I take the stances that I do, because I can articulate my thoughts pretty damn well. I mean, I hope that's evident by this point. But we need to move forward, and we can't do that until we actually address the underlying issues. The underlying issues are not the fancy, big, flashy stuff that will be a revolution. The small details, the small threads that need to be repaired are things that you have to have as an undercurrent to the bigger things that are going on. But you need that foundation to be built, to be fixed, before you can actually make progress on the bigger things. So, I want things to be better. I am scared. I am scared for myself. I am scared for this country. I am scared for anyone who finds themselves at the other end of a violent conflict. Do you think that people can eventually be unified in peace or something? Personally, it seems like humans will always find a way to divide themselves and use violence. Quoting from the chat, just in case that didn't come clear in the recording. Do I think that we can find a way to unify? I think it's possible. I think that, and this is, again, a whole huge discussion. I do believe that one of the divisive factors in the world is things like capitalism and scarcity. When we don't have enough things to distribute to everyone, then it's a lot easier to be angry at the people that we perceive as holding it back from us. And as a result, capitalism is literally the idea of taking. It's literally taking as much as you can, all of the capital, all of the power that comes with having more capital, being able to redistribute that as, the currency that you decide where it gets to go, you decide what to influence with it. And meanwhile, the people who are actually creating the capital in the first place don't get to benefit from it. And so you have individuals within that society that are no longer benefiting, who have scarcity, I can speak, and it's artificial scarcity, by the way, at this point, because we can absolutely produce pretty much everything that we need in order to survive on an individual basis. If we did away with the whole concept of capital, if we did away with the whole concept of having to use money to buy the things that we need to survive, if we did away with that, we would be able to find ways to make it work. But we're so ingrained into the idea that we need to be paid back for what we do, that we need to have some sort of capital in order to get what we need, that we are ignoring that on a simple basis, the whole concept was created as a way to make sure that we could distribute what was made based on what individual people could bring to the table, and then make sure that the people who did that work got credit for it. Hence the whole concept of capital in the first place. But the end game of capitalism is always was always going to be where we are now, where a handful of people hold all of the capital after having profited off of the work of the people. And if it sounds like I'm socialist, it's because I am. I am extremely left-leaning, as if that's not obvious already. I believe that we can have a society where we do get along, and perhaps it is a bit utopian, perhaps it is a bit unrealistic to expect. Perhaps it is somewhat of a dream at this point because we are so entrenched in the idea that we need to have, instead of the concept of what can we make together. That the division inherently happens because we are so focused on what we can't have because of artificial scarcity. And we get angry at the people that we are told are the ones taking it away from us. We are artificially angry at the people who we believe are doing harm because of political differences. I believe that a lot of this anger, we're always going to have some form of division for one reason or another. It's always going to be conflict because human beings are complicated, tangled messes that we make mistakes and we do things that hurt one another. I am speaking from personal experience. I have always meant well in my life, but that has not always translated to being the best person to everyone around me. And I admit that. I have admitted that for years. And I try to do what I can, and I have been making progress to rectify that just on a personal, individual basis. I know that despite how much I care for the people around me, how much I care for the world at large, I make mistakes that hurt people. We all do. And I think understanding that is kind of the important thing that we need to start focusing on. Not they've done something that hurts me, so I need to get them back for it. Or I've done something that deserves reward, so I need that paid back to me. I believe that accepting the flaws that we have and moving past the idea of requiring currency to indicate how much we deserve something. As soon as we eliminate money as the motivation for, as a barrier to things like healthcare, to things like shelter, to things like food, as soon as we eliminate the concept of requiring money to survive, the sooner that we can actually move to a place where we are not trying to hurt each other to survive. Because I do believe that we are a place, technologically, where we could, in fact, provide. In fact, we do provide enough. There are more houses than there are homeless people. There's more food that we produce on a daily basis that doesn't actually get used, that gets thrown out because it can't be sold in a pretty way, in a pretty easily packaged way, or because it just simply cannot be distributed in time. Because there is an artificial barrier on whether or not people can even purchase it. Things get thrown out because people don't have the means to actually purchase it. Well, if you want to change society, it probably starts with educating children. Might be not much. Yeah, our children are the future. I agree with that. But I think that in order to educate the children, we as adults also need to educate ourselves. We need to be aware of the systems that we live in. We need to be aware of how complicated people truly are so that we can start finding the ways to understanding all of this and understanding one another, understanding the bigger picture. Again, we've all been in such a state of fear and hurt that we don't want to expend the mental energy that it takes to forgive. We don't want to expend the mental energy that it would take to actually try to understand the mess and try to untangle it. It's easier to hate. It is psychologically easier to be negative, to hate one another for what slights we have received from one another than it is to examine what has hurt us in the first place. And I believe that in order to get to the point where we are teaching future generations about how to be better and how to construct a world that genuinely can be if not utopian, then at least collectively better than where we are now. We as adults need to start actually taking responsibility for shaping the future as well. The kids can only do so much. It's been handed to us to take care of this now and in the present, and that's why I feel that it is necessary for us to take the stand and do what we are doing. Not the whole, violence and killing people and authoritarian fascism and all of that stuff. That much we could probably do without. It would be really nice if we could go and do without that. But, I care about this a lot. I wonder what would be the best form of society, including government. I don't want to be all nothing works, but it seems like every form of society, government just doesn't work. I don't know that we're going to ever find a perfect government or a perfect society that allows itself to be governed in such a way that does not end up being inconvenient, because humans are so varied in what we want, what we desire, and what we believe that it is hard to come to a consensus. I personally believe that socialism, in the sense that we come together as a community to support one another, to bring what we individually have to the table so that we can, in fact, create a greater network of support for ourselves and for each other to become a unified family. And again, I know that some people are immediately hearing this and immediately going, well, that didn't work. Communism doesn't work. Yeah, communism doesn't work because communism is still based on capital and the redistribution of capital. True socialism is that you take the means of production. That's why that phrase is there. It literally means the people who have the tools to make the things that create capital, that create the things that we need to survive. The people who take the tools that make the food. The people who take the tools that make our clothing. The people who take the factories and actually produce those things and simply do it because by doing it, we all create what needs to be made as a society for each other. If the farmers no longer have to worry about being able to make their ends meet and being able to connect to the wider society, then the work that they do would still be indispensable. And they have the tools to do it, and instead of distributing it to a third party to then distribute to the rest of the world, the rest of the country, and so on and so forth, it would just be assumed that these things could be distributed to the people that needed them. Just as we have individuals who run the machines that make all of the things that, we need or that we use, or even the luxuries. I believe that if we genuinely remove the third party that is the capitalists, the people who pretend to own everything, and I say pretend because they don't own it, they just have on paper the legal right to claim that they do. I think that if we were to move in a world where money was literally not a factor, where currency, where capital was not, in fact, a factor, I believe that we could actually come closer to finding a society where human beings no longer have to tear each other apart. And you're always going to find people who want to do harm. You're always going to find dissenters. You're always going to want to find... You're not going to want to find... You're going to always find people who are violent, who are hateful, who are narcissistic, who want to create problems. But in a society where everyone is getting their basic needs met, it is a lot easier to identify when you have a bad actor and to be able to address it. And you will actually reduce the people who do harm, because a lot of people who do harm are doing it in desperation because the things that they need are locked behind a barrier of some kind, usually a financial barrier. So like a trade-based economy, I wouldn't even say trade-based. I don't think trading even needs to be a thing. If all of the farmers are producing the food that we need, I'm using it as a very simplistic example, but all of the farmers are producing the food, but someone else is providing the vehicles that move the food, and someone else is providing the machines that process the food. If we are all collectively working together, then we can, in fact, redistribute it to everyone as they all need it. We're not trading it. We're not doing it in exchange. We are collectively doing it together. And so it ends up being together, collectively, we get to reap the benefits of what we all individually can do. The whole concept of socialism has become so bastardized because the people who wanted to vilify it successfully did so. And the people who used it and abused it, in the case of communism, they added to that. They created bigger problems than there even were in the first place. They have made it look worse and ineffective as a result of trying to make capitalism but rebranding it. It was never truly socialism. It was using socialism as a name and as a supposed basis for the behaviors, but to truly still streamline the capital going to individuals to assume some sort of authoritative control. But if we are in fact working together to create the things that we need, and we don't require a financial barrier and we don't require trade, because an individual can produce enough for more than one person. We can all bring things to the table and collectively enjoy the benefits of all of that. But it's going to take a while to shift from a society that focuses on the concept of trade, of capital, of ownership. I mean, we do own things, I guess. I guess ownership in the sense of, I have to sit on a pile, I have to sit on a hoard, or else I am vulnerable. If we create a society where people are not vulnerable by virtue of being denied access to the things that they need to survive, you're going to see fewer crime instances. You're going to see fewer criminals, because if they don't have to go out and steal shit, then they're not going to do it. If you don't have to go out on the street to be able to earn money by, dealing drugs, you're not going to have drug dealing. You're not going to have that kind of distribution. If you're making it so that the bad actors are no longer encouraged by society to behave that way in order to either, quote unquote, get ahead or just to survive, if you have proper psychological support, this is again tying into the whole concept behind defund/abolish the police. If you instead send a psychologist to deal with someone who is having a psychotic meltdown, then you're going to have someone still alive at the end of that encounter, and anyone who is dealing with psychological issues, someone who is dealing with mental illness, can have that problem addressed before it gets to the place of violence. And even if it does reach a point of violence, it can be handled by people who are appropriately trained to deal with it. That's the whole concept behind defund the police. Take the money, the billions of fucking dollars going to the police, and redistribute it to the services that will genuinely help our society better and to improve, instead of allocating it all to the individuals who are just doing it ultimately for financial gain, the people who benefit from the police being highly militarized. There is, if we are in fact providing everything that needs to be provided for, it's a lot easier to patch the holes that currently exist. Because, for example, there's a common complaint of, why can't I have access to the art that I want to consume? Why are you putting it behind a pay barrier? And it's like, because an artist, unfortunately, also lives in a capitalist society right now. And creators, content creators, artists, writers, singers, performers, unfortunately, there has to be a monetary value associated with what they do, because otherwise there is a lot of effort that's put into something that now they can no longer afford to keep their apartment. They can no longer afford to buy food. They can no longer afford to pay for health care. If they don't have that money to do all of those things, then they can't do the artistic, creative work. They have to find another way to earn that money. So the money that goes into the creative arts, the creative work out there, you will see the benefit of. Art, and again, this goes back to my whole point of, if we have all of these basic needs met on a regular basis, then artists can create without having to address those personal needs, without charging for the art that they create. M Game says, I see now I didn't get the defund police thing because it was reduced to a hashtag. I see nuance a good amount of the time, so I hate hashtags. They don't explain enough for me. I guess that it's true. It's a lot easier to spread something through the idea of a hashtag or a simple phrase and then get people curious about it. That's kind of the purpose behind that. That's kind of how advertising works. Get people curious about the phrase and maybe investigate it, or at least understand that it is branded with a particular, like, mode of conduct or something like that. But yes, that's what defund the police means, is that it's to take the excessive billions of dollars. It's not cut all of the police everywhere out of their jobs. I mean, ideally, we don't rely on finances to pay for that kind of thing, but I hate the police as an institution. Individual police people may not be terrible, but they're part of a system that unfortunately is doing greater harm to this country than it is currently benefiting. And unfortunately, the people who are bad actors within the police institution are creating violence through their actions and through their greed. They are creating violence because they are over-policing certain communities. They are creating more arrests. They are creating more problems for our country because they want to have a certain extra bonus in their overtime hours. They want to spend the time processing arrest paperwork so that they can get paid for that time without being actually out on the street. They are being paid an excessive amount of money, and they're not even admitting what they are spending that money on. They are saying things like, you know, I remember seeing, and unfortunately I do not have it off the top of my head. I do not have it readily available to show, so I guess take it all with a grain of salt. But I have seen an actual receipt of the expenses within at least one particular police department, and they were buying, like, snacks using federal funding. They bought jet skis on federal funding. That's where the money is going to. It's not going to the actual job itself, and it's certainly not going to helping people. Individual people might find themselves saved by the actions of the police because that is what ostensibly they are there to do. But as a whole, they don't need as much money as they are doing to do what they need to do. And again, if we eliminate the whole concept of requiring money for our basic necessities, then the funding that goes to the police ends up being kind of like incidental anyway. We need better services in this country. We need more emphasis on these things. We need access. Access, access, access. We can't be denied access to the things that we need to survive. It's in its own way, and this is one of those things where people are like, oh, they're so violent, they're setting fire to buildings. Denial of access to things that we need to survive is a form of sinister violence that is not physically hitting someone but still depriving them of a way to survive. Ultimately, if you can't have access to health care and you get sick, if you can't have access to food, if you can't have access to water, if you can't have access to shelter, then you will die. That is straight up the end result of not being able to afford these things. And that is a form of violence. And this gets perpetuated against particular subsects of society. There are certain demographics within our society that suffer that far more than others. Hence why we want to address the inequity between demographics within this country. Access is restricted by money. And imagine if tomorrow, ignoring a pandemic, let's roll things back to a time before this pandemic. Imagine if you got a cold and you know that you're going to be miserable dealing with a cold. Imagine if you could not go about your day doing a particular job, if you could, quote unquote, call off work, because you can then go to a doctor and get the basic, easy medication to deal with the cold, to wipe it out at the first basis so that you can rest, recover, and then come back without spreading that virus everywhere. Same thing with the common flu. Imagine if instead of being forced to go into work, or you might lose your job and your only access to food, rent, etc., etc., imagine if when you're sick, you can just stay home, rest, recover, and not spread the virus around. Imagine if, when you're having a mental health breakdown, if you don't have to go into work, if you're not required to torment yourself more because of what you're dealing with, because of the otherwise threatened, restricted access. All right, take care, Phoenix. If we don't have restricted access to these things, then we can thrive and progress as a community, as a society, as a race, the human race, if we want to be fucking pedantic about this. We can actually grow if we stop telling people that they don't deserve something because they don't have enough capital. Am I angry? Yeah. Am I frustrated? Absolutely. Am I terrified? Yeah, very much so. We are seeing the end result of letting this kind of ideology simply fall into the background and to even paint it as something that hurts people. If we paint the idea that we redistribute shit to the masses so that we can all progress collectively as a society, if we paint that as fascism because it requires some kind of organization that will genuinely say, hey, this is where this goes in order to make sure that everyone can survive, if that gets labeled as fascism, it's a lot easier to prevent that from happening. And a lot of people are invested in seeing it as fascism because the ones who profit from actual fascism and capitalism, where they restrict access to things by virtue of financial blocks, they benefit eternally from you thinking that the idea of collectively working with other people to create a better society is going to be to your detriment. I use a lot of big words. And I know that the way that I say things is very wordy. And there are times when I kind of have to pause and step back from what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, and be like, okay, is the best way to word this way? Because technically, the words I use are correct. But the understanding of what I'm saying can get muddy. Because even there, for example, I wanted to say can get obscured. And yet, again, I have to remember obscured is not always understood. But when I talk about these things, I'm talking about big concepts and I'm explaining them in big words. There are a lot of people out there that are not going to understand some of the words that I use. I like wordy, it makes me think more. Yeah, no, I tend to operate on the basis of when I say shit that people are going to understand it either by the way that I say it or the context of the words or because they understand the words already. I am not, an intellectual elitist in the sense of I'm trying to speak in a way so that you can't understand. And I want to find a way to condense all of this into the simplest 3 words. I want to create a hashtag that genuinely causes understanding of all of these concepts, and it is hard. Because it's a lot easier to say, oh, global warming can't be happening because there's still snow. You remember that argument. Even if you think it's ridiculous, you still remember it. Do you remember the science that actually goes into explaining why global warming actually causes periods of freezing and intense weather and intense storms where you get more snow than perhaps you did before? Do you know the actual way that dumping further cold water into the oceans of the world ends up actually creating colder environments to an extent, but that the overall raised temperature of the planet is what's causing that? That's not easy. That's not a hashtag. That's not a simple phrase that you can throw out there and have people understand the complexity of what is leading to the concept of global warming, of climate change. I like the wordy too. Thank you. I like the wordy too. I love wordy. I am wordy. It is what I am. I am defined by wordy. But, you can't see my gestures as I'm doing this. You didn't see my wiggle my fingers over at the side of my face. I wish it were easier to condense all of this. I wish that people who do understand this, perhaps on an intuitive level, like they know it just inherently, but they don't have all of the studies that they can throw in someone's face, and they don't have an easy way to explain it. You know, it is difficult. And as I've said before, if I have the ability to convey it in a way, to tell people in a way that they understand what I'm saying, that is my strength. That is my forte. Endgame says, I hate Twitter because I can be wordy as well. Character limits, like in Twitter, make things worse, in my opinion. I agree. I have put several rants on Twitter, and of course I get frustrated when I have to sum up a word and then create a new tweet. I'm glad that they have new chains to be able to continue the rant from there, but Twitter is not a good medium for expressing essays, unfortunately. But life is complex. It is complicated, it is not easy to understand, and again, it is a lot easier to understand things that make you feel better about yourself. It is easier to hate other people if it means that you find yourself being supported by those who hate the same thing. It is a lot easier, it is intellectually easier, it is physically easier to blame someone else and put the responsibility on another group of people, and you can do that eternally. Because as soon as one person proves to not be an effective target, you can change the goalpost, you can shift it in a completely different direction. You can change the goal always because it is so much easier than saying, hey, how do we actually fix this? How do we address this? And people have the answers for that. We do have the answers for that. But they're not easy concepts to explain, not as easy as hating. There's a lot that's not just complicated, like, I even just had a thought, but ADHD decided to steal that thought from me. Isn't that awesome? See, this is one of the reasons why I'm not I'm not the sort of person who can do a traditional job, because I literally had a thought inside my head and it decided to escape. There's difficulty in rendering the sort of world that I ideally would like to see. I don't know that we would be able to do it within a single generation. I mean, it would be nice. I think that we are at a point where talking about these bigger concepts and trying to find the middle ground is something that should have happened decades ago. Like, a lot of people joke about, 2020, they've been joking for years. 2020 is the year of hindsight. In hindsight, 2020, we're going to have better vision. And I think that the problem is that we are now seeing in perfect clarity things that we should have, in hindsight, known were going to happen. In hindsight, we should have known that the racial divide in the United States and in the world within individual social structures based on race, we should have known that it was eventually going to come to a head like this. We should have known that inflicting violence on a community for years, for decades, for centuries, will eventually result in some kind of retaliation. We should have known that a capitalist society, because we've had this information for a while, a capitalist society will lead to access being restricted to those who have the capital to afford it. We should have known, in hindsight, that a disaster like a pandemic needs to be handled quickly and carefully and with good leadership to organize us in such a way so that we collectively, all 300 fucking million, I think it's 330 million members of the United States, the citizens of the United States, can actually cohesively work together to prevent the spread of a pandemic. We should have known to set things in place, and we did know. We did have a set thing in place to deal with pandemics that was dismantled. We are now seeing in absolute clarity all of the things that led up to this point. In hindsight, we should have seen these things coming. And I say that bitterly and sarcastically and with more than a little bit of resignation, of feeling like it was inevitably, that it was always going to be this way. We should have seen it coming. We should have seen this year coming. And it's being thrown into sharp focus. We are seeing these problems for what they are, and we don't have the tools to manage it. So instead, we are trying to scramble within the only system that we know to be able to handle it. So, this is all, one stream. And I don't know that everyone who comes to my channel is going to have 2 hours to listen to me talk about this sort of thing. I do know that I've had ideas towards making smaller videos to break down individual concepts as what I describe in this video. I have wanted to make podcasts that can be a lot more easily distributed. Some of them might even be, I hate to say it this way, but Patreon exclusive, because I do rely on that support in a capitalist society where things are restricted based on whether or not you have enough capital to afford them. But I do try to put my ideas out there for free, as best I can. Because I think that ideas are important to share. If I did a private podcast, it would probably be far more like, let me tell you about personal details of my life, or here's a thought on this, or something. But, that's part of why I wanted to make Symbolism and Lore, is to talk about the things within our society, within our media, that tell us a lot of how we see ourselves and how we see each other. What Obama's last name? I don't get paid enough. Obama is in fact his last name. I don't know if that... I'm pretty sure that's not a good faith question. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're just genuinely and sincerely confused about Obama's surname, but, But I would love to make easily digestible content that would share a lot of these concepts in such a way that we might be able to have more people understand this. Nah, I'm just playing. Alright. I apologize, unfortunately, it's really hard to tell whether or not someone is playing with you in the sense of trying to argue with you or make you upset or things like that. And I apologize if I was hesitant on that. I have had far too many encounters and discussions that were not made in good faith. And it's kind of hard to tell when someone is telling a joke and when someone is sincerely trying to mess with you. So, for that I apologize. I want to make easily digestible sound bites that can easily be transferred the same way that a lot of stuff that on the right side of the political spectrum, they make cavalier, off-the-cuff comments that that are easily understandable and transmissible, and people can share that easily. It's a lot easier to say something simple that everyone, quote-unquote, already knows than it is to actually dissect what it is we think we know. So, I eventually want to move to a better place. I think we all kind of want to move to a better place. And we have been on this single frame of me doing this artwork for a very long time. So as much as I want to continue talking about that, I might even share that, or save that. I'll share it, but I'll also save that for perhaps exactly the sort of thing that I was talking about. A series of videos or podcasts or so on and so forth, where I talk about these things in an inclusive and easy to understand way But in the meantime, I also want to make content that is creative and enjoyable and entertaining and takes us away from some of these bigger things that make us largely uncomfortable and miserable and difficult to deal with situations the way that they are. Which is another one of the reasons why I'm hoping to have this new Ballad of Lorelei out relatively soon. There's a lot that I wanted to do with that series, things that I've had written for the last 3 years, at the very least, that have yet to come out. We're barely touching on the immediate story that Griffin and I worked out like 3 years ago. So hopefully that will be... hopefully that'll be just getting more escalation. I would love to have more of that story come out. I'd love to have more symbolism and lore stuff coming out. I think I mentioned that I have one related to Undertale, which I'm probably going to be tackling as soon as I get this one finished. But I want to make content. I want to make it funny, and I also want to survive in society. Thanks for taking the time for the informative stuff, too. It's insightful hearing other perspectives such as yours. Thank you, Tomato Kind, red as a tomato. Endgame, I'd listen to these podcasts, or those podcasts that can explain things are fun to me. Even if you don't want to do it yourself, maybe you can point to people who do. There are so many people out there that make that kind of content. A good chunk of them are people of color, especially black people of color. So honestly, there are so many TED Talks, there are so many videos, there are so many channels that are dedicated to talking about these issues. I'm sharing my opinion that aligns with all of this stuff, but people within the black community have been talking about a good chunk of this shit. Not necessarily socialist stuff, because not everyone who is black is a socialist, obviously that's the case. But a lot of my opinions are informed by the others who have done the research in the first place to actually make it a reality, to make it understandably why this is a solution. We're just kind of ignoring it because it's inconvenient to the people in power. But there's a lot of that out there. I would love to do a podcast. Obviously, I love hearing the sound of my own voice. If that's not clear, the fact that I have continued talking long after Griffin has left the call. But I'm I want to make content, and I want to be happy, and I want not the world to be ending, and also the pandemic not being a thing would be nice, because, I will say this, I've said it before, if I get it, I ain't surviving it. Like, it's not a case of, oh, well, maybe you could, it's literally the way that it is designed, the way that it attacks the system, is something that will straight up kill me, unfortunately. I would love to be able to go outside and go do things. Unfortunately, I can't risk exposure. I haven't looked myself because of my own struggles in life. Honestly, and I'm going to say this, when I say that it's not always easy to do these kinds of things, it's also taking into account things like life sucks sometimes. Individual struggles can absolutely get in the way of being able to get out and do things, or to see things, or to do the research for things, because again, when you're feeling like you can't even sit upright, when you're feeling like, life is exhausting, when you're doubting yourself and your place in the world, is real easy to not want to focus on the big scary things that need fixing, or even just to find out about this information in general, to find out the nuances, to find out the discussions that people are having behind the scenes. And that's understandable. Like, I'm not in the position of, like, accusing people of how dare you, because, I also deal with that. I also deal with the frustration of I want to do more, but I feel pinned by my own limitations. I think even just the small ways that we can kind of come around these situations, the small ways that we can adapt our understanding of the world and learn more from one another, even if it's just the, hey, today, even though I feel like shit, I'm going to open up a video that talks about this thing. And it doesn't have to be like watch the whole thing. Watch maybe like, 10 minutes of it, especially if it's like an hours long video of things. Take the time where you can, and in such a way where you are able to process it. Like, I know that there are times when even things that I know the shit being discussed, it will sometimes roll over me because my ability to focus on it is severely impaired. Did you know that ears have definition? I don't know if you knew that. Apparently I don't. But it's also important that, like, there is literally everything that we all do in the world that improve it for the people around us, even if it's just the small ways that we can support each other, the small ways that we can be kind to individuals. If you just tell someone that they are valid today, then you are doing something that contributes to the bigger picture improving for everyone. Hi, Kikyo! Brain has been bad, so I couldn't check news on the world. Understandable. But yeah, just the small things that can be done to improve the state of things, like, they also still make a difference. That's the whole concept of collectively we do the things that we can to elevate one another. Because when we do that, we can then collectively improve things on the small scale and on the bigger scale. Let's get this down to the right size. Okay. You're all valid. Deal with it, says Zach. You deserve it the good. It fact. Agreed. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, but Zach is a monumental sweetheart, one of the best floofs that I have had the privilege of getting to know. He has been exceptionally supportive of me and my content over the years, and, if he doesn't already know it, then he deserves all of the kindness that he dishes out to everyone else. And I'm going to continue doing that, and I can already imagine that he is typing right now is like, no, don't do this, it's not okay, or even just like, well, I guess I'll accept you saying it because I have to, by my own standards. Ditto back at ya. Hides! I called it! I fucking called it! Zach is saying hides in the chat right now. He does not want credit for being an awesome, amazing person. So he's gonna hide. He's going to refuse getting the actual attention that his good stuff, his good behavior actually calls for. The acknowledgement of being a wonderful, kind person. Yes, suffer, Zach, from our love, says Kikyo. Nah, I will accept it, says Zach. I mean, you will. I'll make you accept it! But genuinely, when I say that I have a creed of kindness, it's because that's what I want to do with my life. I want to spend my life encouraging people. I want to spend my life sharing words that make them feel better about themselves. I want people to feel strong enough within their own lives to be able to handle the onslaught that is living. Even without the onslaught of life being bigger, the struggles that we have to deal with that are external, there's the internal shit that also needs to be dealt with. Being nice just feels nice. Or for being, I genuinely deserve the good I get for being a good person, or for being a person in general. Being nice just feels nice. Agreed. I was just reading what Zach was saying, in case you need an idea of what sort of person he is. There you go. I happen to agree with that very philosophy. Oh god, and of course I immediately think of the song from... what is it? The fucking Charlie Brown musical, but my new philosophy. It's a good song. The one that I think is largely on YouTube is by the Kristen Chenoweth, who is also very incredibly talented, and the song is fucking hilarious. And that's my new philosophy. I wish that tiny person's vocals could also be mine. I wish that I could perform as well as she does. Anyway. Kindness, Creed, by Ubisoft. Nah, fuck Ubisoft. Just kidding, although someone pouncing a person, saying kind things, and then running away sounds like a good game. That's true. I would love for that. I would love for the Hobbs strategy of throwing kindness at people, which is just stalk them when they come home, pounce them, and give them all of the kindness and love. But yeah, seriously, fuck Ubisoft. Like, they harbored terrible behavior. They literally defended it. They allowed it to happen. They knew about it. They enabled it. They never did anything about it. But yes, I mean, I'd love to see more video games being produced by independent creators. Like, you know, going back to Undertale once again. I can always bring it back to Undertale, let's be real. But prepares net to capture kind floof. Yes, Kikyo, please do so. He's not allowed to escape. He cannot escape our love. But the idea of having a philosophy of being kind to one another, I think, is vitally important going forward. And even just those small things. Small ways that you can improve someone's day, even just by saying hi, you know? Like, I am terrible. I am a lurker to the extreme. I'm terrible about reaching out to people. I know that I see people's names and I think, oh, I'm so happy that they're there, but it is really hard to externalize that. So, like, I know a lot of you who are watching this, either presently or in the future, listening to this. Alright, I did this wrong. Anyway, if you're probably thinking, well, I don't want to bother them, though. What if I catch them at the wrong time? And, like, I'll say this. You might. There's a chance of that. And there are sometimes people who don't handle it well when they are distracted from something that they are doing. That's, you know, human flaws in play right there. But I have found that a lot more people feel isolated because someone never says hi to them, and then they feel like they can't reach out and be the one to say hi because what if they're bothering someone? And it becomes this self-perpetuating cycle of wanting to socialize but being scared to do it for fear of offending other people. And of course there's also the example of, it's been so long since I've spoken with this person that if I were to come out of the woodwork to talk to them now, you know, would it just be weird? That's another one. And I'm here to tell you, do it. Fucking talk to people, you coward. And this is addressed at myself as much as anyone else. Same, I'm lurker, like, spreading the good vibes. Says Zach, I'll fight away if I choose to. Same, says Tomato Kind, red as a tomato. M-Game, yeah, that's me, I always think I'm bothering people. Kikyo, I'd poke you more, lore, but yeah, I don't want to bother you, and social energy is low. Same! Tomato Kind, yeah, mood. I'm making this a song, apparently. I hope you can sing along. Okay. Boy, that got weird. I heard myself echo there, and I was just like, wow, I can be fucking loud when I want to be. I'm good at projecting. Boy, that's a statement that could be taken many ways. Song! Hi, Shakarian. Good to hear from you. I know you've been here. I'm just saying hi. There you go. There's an example of it. Say hi when you feel inclined to say hello to someone. Okay? I tease. But genuinely, the worst that you're going to get from someone is someone being irritated that perhaps that you interrupted them. And if it's someone who does genuinely get upset with you for interrupting them, like to the sense of like actually yelling at you for saying hi, then you may not want to invest the emotional energy in such a person anyway. There are days when I get too much social energy and I don't know how to express it. That's also a mood. Music it up like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Yes. Abso-fucking-lutely. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, watch it. It's good. Also, content warning for a bunch of stuff. It gets super, like, it's not particularly violent, but a lot of the psychological stuff, it goes really super in-depth. The third season is also one of the most difficult to cope with. But yeah. Say hi when you feel like saying hello to someone. Well, I just dropped into hi. Hi, Ian. I am currently in the process of taking Red as a Tomato, as well as our friend Gab, Serena Midori, through the series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And so far, like, the common refrain is, hey, unintentional pun there. The common refrain is, how dare you call me out for this? How dare this show call me out? Oh, I am cringing and groaning because this is too real. This is way too real and on the nose. Psychological stuff scares me to a degree. I haven't looked into Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because of that. I will say, this show handles it better than I have ever seen it handled in any other TV show, especially broadcast TV, and a lot of different media out there. It genuinely treats it like as someone who has been through it. You know, someone who has dealt with the various compulsions associated with mental illness. Like, I will say it's also just a good fucking comedy romp that has a very strong emphasis on consent of a bunch of different kinds. Calls out a lot of social norms and stuff like that, and also you get really cool songs that are really fun to listen to, and many of which I need to cover. It tackles in an oak way from what I've seen so far. It does. It handles it as well as it possibly can be handled, but it still brings it up. Otherwise, it just literally, most shows just literally never talk about it. I don't want to get into any kind of spoilers, I suppose, but the third season got to me the most because I have been through, at least to a degree, one of the things that happens to Rebecca in that season, and it just fucking punched me in the face when it happened. But it's good. Like, it's cathartic. Please cover. Yes. Oh, that is the plan. I just need to get my hand on some instrumentals and also some confidence to actually go through with that. I will say, and I'm pretty sure that I've even mentioned this before, but like, the things that have been going on my channel, like the Sirenia Studios most recently, the things that have gotten the most attention have been my song covers. So like every time I'm like, oh, but maybe they don't really like the way that you sing, or maybe they're bored by it, and I'm like, well, it's also the thing that they watch me for the most. So maybe I could get into that. I also reminded myself, by comparing my cover of a thing to someone who is ostensibly more popular I am on the platform, and I know this is all subjective, but I do feel like I am actually better at emoting than I think I am. Like, the way that I tell myself is like, oh, you're terrible at emoting the feelings that need to be expressed in this, and then I've actually compared it with other people who literally do it for a living and don't always necessarily capture the mood as is meant to be understood in the moment. They're singing technically well, and then there's actually emoting through your singing. And they're two very different things. Gives confidence, which isn't much, but maybe it'll help. Thank you. Please cover confettis for you. Thank you, guys. I know that I've got a handful of them in the works, and yes, some from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. one that immediately comes to mind, other than his status is preferred, which cool, sexy song, and it's really cool. There's also wait, wow, that's not my singing voice. I am dealing with a little bit of phlegm, which is making it harder to sing. Anyway, you ruined everything, you stupid bitch. Yes, says the tomato in the chat. Forgive me if I got that wrong, red as a tomato. But I believe, from having listened to you speak, that was how you said it. Calling me out! It's such a mood. That song is a mood. It's such a mood. Calling me out. Yes. I love that the beginning of that particular song is the character singing it going, I am back here singing this song a lot. Well, Rebecca, you've done it now. Karma's come to tap you on the shoulder. And I don't have all of the lyrics memorized at the moment. It's been a while since I've actually listened to the song, but if I do cover it, you'll hear me sing the full thing. But it's a very dramatic song that it's like, you'd think that it would be super niche, but then we literally, like, it's one of the songs that the most people have fucking empathized with. Like, they really related to the song, you've ruined everything, you stupid bitch. It's what we fucking say to ourselves all the fucking time inside our own heads. Do it, cover Oh My Codfish, someday I'll karaoke it too. Good lore singy, much love. Thank you, Kikio. I want to do more content like that. I do not want to cut that, thank you. Sorry. The program decided to be a bitch. It decided to be a bitch because I misclicked something, so. I want to do more singy the thingy. I want to make more content. The entertaining stuff that I've been wanting to make for the last decade, but have, for one reason or another, found myself running into some difficulties. I try to do my best, and I will say that it's been very rewarding to see the response to some of the things that I have been doing. I'm very proud of what I do. I admit some frustration at, when I put effort into something only for it to not do as well as I hope that it would. But it's one of those. I recently passed 200 views on the, or is it 300? Maybe it's 300. Yeah, I think it was 300 views. On the other side cover that I did on Sirenia Studios. And I was like, I've been used to seeing numbers much higher than that on content that I've made. But then I also kind of realized that this is a channel that only has, like, I think presently it's 218 subscribers? I'd have to check the specific number. That's fair, yeah. And it's hard to work up the motivation when it feels like there's no audience for it. It's not to say that there is no audience for it. It's just also mental illness, which makes it a lot harder. Ian says yes. Views / engagement are fickle things. Of course, the way that was unfortunately misspelled was like fuckle things, and it's just like, well, yes, that too. Views and engagement are indeed fuckle things that are fickle. But making content, there's a lot, there's being able to do it quickly, and then there's the work that goes into it. I have spent a good chunk of the stream, obviously, standing on a soapbox and yelling about current social issues, but I don't know if you've been noticing the kind of work that goes into making the individual artwork that I do for the channel, perhaps giving an idea of why it sometimes takes me a little bit of a while to get content out at the degree that I want to get it out. I've had to simplify certain formats for what I wanted to do, and that's fine. There's going to be some format change for how Ballad of Lorelei is conducted going forward, because the individual production rate for what I was already doing was not conducive to actually getting the story out. 218 subs and 322 views. I also need to wear my glasses, and I'm not doing that. But it's doing better than I thought it was going to do. I would like to do more. I would love to make something that actually goes viral, but that's having a steady fan base growing, I guess, a steady viewership is actually technically preferable, because I've known more than a handful of people who've rocketed into sudden popularity and realizing, oh shit, I don't know what to do with this. And I don't know that I would necessarily do much better at that, but I would love to have an audience of a bunch of people. I would love to have a bunch of people who want to hop on my Patreon. Okay, I don't want to necessarily be the person who's, again, I've said this pretty much every time, I don't want to be the person who points towards, hey, pay me money. I really do strictly only want it to be a voluntary thing, and only if it's something that is feasible to do. I never want to put pressure on people to pay me for what I do. Outside of my rant about capitalism earlier, I don't want to be in the position of being a creator who has to ask for money, but I still mention it, as I've said before, because some people need reminders. Or if it's not a matter of reminding, like if you get someone who's coming new to something, or, you know, something along those lines, it's hard to promote something as like, yeah, give me money, but I mention my Patreon because a good majority of my income actually comes from that. Also through donations on streams like this, hence why I have like the coffee link on the screen right now, the coffee.com/mlorelei. I usually provide links for that always, because mentioning it makes it a bit easier for people to be like, oh, I want to do that, but like for the people who want to and might be able to, but they're like, I want to do that, but I need to wait until I have more money, and then they get to the point where they have more money and they want to do that thing, but it kind of slipped into the background. I know I'm elaborately explaining something, but if you love Laura's content, join her Patreon and support her. Gets punched. We could spread the Patreon link around, it is, I mean, you could, if you want to fucking link to my videos and be like, hey, if you like this, then here's also this, and fucking point at the Patreon. And I'll even say this, like, everyone always says this, and everyone always feels self-conscious about only, quote-unquote, doing $1 a month. Like, they're like, oh, I want to support you, but I don't want to do it for just $1, but it's like, if all 200 of my subscribers on Sirenia Studios alone did $1, that would be $200 a month. Like, you know, that would be $218 a month. Probably a little bit less than that after taxes. And a good chunk of the people who are on the Sirenia Studios channel watching those videos, subscribe to it, are patrons as well. But I do have plans, and like I know this is one of those things, like once I find myself in a more financially stable position, I would love to be commissioning more artists and editors and stuff like that to actually help with the content production. I would love to bring in artists to help with things like the Ballad of Lorelei, so that that could be produced at a slightly faster rate than it currently is. I can write things technically a lot faster than I can draw them. And as much as I enjoy arting, it is not always the easiest thing for me. Other people who do it much better, and more intensely, and much more consistently than I am able to, and I would love to be able to pay someone for that work to help make things work. My ideal would be that I genuinely turn Sirenia Studios into a studio production thing where people are getting paid for the work that they do. And in order to do that, I've already been commissioning, because you've probably even seen, like, there's the other Friends cover that I did with Griffin. we actually we commissioned someone to do the actual video editing for that, because it was one of those things where we kind of knew that that video was going to be kind of important. We had a lot of pride that we had in that video, so Griffin and I kind of collectively ended up commissioning someone to do the video editing on that. I would love to do that more often. I would love to pay other artists, because I'm doing something that people want to pay for, and so kind of like creating this network of people getting paid for work to do. Yeah, it all adds up. I have no idea how much of a delay people might be experiencing right now. Anyway, but my plans are genuinely to try and get to a point where I can direct the content that's being made and still obviously have my hand in the production of it, but also to, like, focus on the symbolism and lore, like writing and putting the audio editing and stuff like that together, and perhaps having someone else do the video editing for it. Someone who is better at making it smoother and easier to watch and all of that, and I would, again, want to pay them for that. That's kind of the ideal, is that I want to spread a good chunk, but unfortunately I'm still at the point where what I'm making does cover, like, you know, day-to-day stuff that needs to get done. I am not doing this very well. There's a saying that the sketch always ends up looking better than the final result. And there's a degree of truth to that. Sometimes the sketch looks better than the final thing, or the line art of it. Sounds like a solid long-term plan. Here I am, Gold Ingot, thank you very much. Ian, lore and symbolism and lore, really opens my eyes to real issues with our world and tries to give an answer based on just episode 3, monsters, and I really like it. Honestly, my original episode 3 that I wrote over a year ago was actually the Undertale one. And I was taking too long to produce that, and then the world kind of shifted, and so I was like, I might want to address this issue, talking about the way that we perceive this particular symbol within our media, the way that we see people as represented in our media, and how it's really easy to sort of conjure monsters out of our daily life. So there, now I've described the entire video, and now you don't have to spend 20 minutes actually watching it. Good job, me shooting myself in the foot. Fuck. I should probably get either a better tablet. I will say the tablet that I have, I got back in 2014, and it has been pretty consistently useful for what I do. And like the sketch be less stiff than the line art, I feel this is struggle art-wise. Still watch it, still worth a watch. Yeah, no, I think that it is still, I do go into greater detail, obviously, giving examples, talking about some of the specifics of it, and I talk about the current movement and what the Black Lives Matter movement, and, you know, kind of what we need to be taking away from it, what we need to start moving towards. So, watch my content. Watch my videos, watch my song covers, watch my symbolism and lores, watch my Ballad of Lorelei. Because I will say this, I am actually excited for some of the content that's going to be coming up in Ballad of Lorelei, for example. There is a character that is yet to be introduced, who, if you are in my Discord servers, you know probably. Especially if you know me, you know who I'm talking about. And I'm just going to wait for Red as a Tomato to start screaming. Yeah, I'd still watch it too, thank you, Shakarian. But yes, there is a character that I will eventually be introducing on that front, who I absolutely blame Serena Midori for introducing me to and upending and ruining my life. And then there is Red as a Tomato. Lamau screams, key smash, stop calling me out. I literally take screams as you codfishing that guy codfishing Thank you, Serena Midori, for ruining our lives. Red as a Tomato is another fan of this particular character. It's going to be a different iteration of that character, but... heck, why not just even show you it? Yeah, may as well. Because this is, preview, I guess we could go with it. She's speaking the language of gods. Yes. Hi! Key Smash cries. And then just, hi! So here's a nice little fucking preview of at least one of the characters that I am interested in introducing at some point. And gee, I wonder if Lorelai likes him. But we're still a ways away from that. Weldon, yeah, Wizard Man, says Red as a Tomato. It be the Wizard Man. I love how in our recent session of Modem, oh boy, it always comes back to Modem, doesn't it? Anyway, the resident Wizard Man was mentioned, and then both Griffin and I both referenced Triangle Man, Triangle Man. And then the thing is that I said Triangle Man, and Griffin did Wizard Man, Wizard Man. And it was simultaneously, because we do that. He ruined and watered our crops. At Red, teach me the ways of the headbang into the keyboard. I mean, first of all, you need to put on a solid basis of heavy metal, and then from there, just move your head to the music, and eventually... Alright. And now I'm just picturing that every time that Red as a Tomato is key smashing, there's like this heavy metal playing in the background. I can't do heavy metal vocally. I just can't. I can't yell. I struggle with yelling. The few times where I've actually yelled about something, it's just been like almost entirely on accident. I can't willingly yell. Yeah, what Laura said, use the power of metal. That's the closest you're ever going to get to me being able to do something like yelling. But yes, he is a character that I have excessive fondness for, and immediately shipped with my self-insert protagonist, who I will add, just in case it needs the clarification. The Lorelai in the Ballad of Lorelai is a fictional character, because she's about to go on some adventures that have nothing to do with reality. We've already established that she can do things that I cannot do. She's based on elements of myself, but kind of taken to an extreme. Like, for example, the whole amnesia thing, and this wouldn't be a spoiler because it's not the context within the show, within the series rather, is based on the fact that because I experienced some pretty intense trauma throughout my teen years and all of that, I actually have patches of my memory that are just not there. Me yelling in the text when it's real life, tiredly staring at my phone, says Kikyo, yes. Hey Siri, play Kids Bop Wake Me Up. I will say, the Kids Bop Wake Me Up is fucking hilarious. The version that I love is, I think, the synthesis version, where it doesn't have the male vocals on it. It just has Amy Lee's part, and it turns out that it sounds a lot better without a guy screaming, "Wake me up," in between Amy Lee's vocals. Wake me up inside, wake me up inside, call my name and save me from the dark. Bid my blood to run before I come undone. Anyway, it's a good version. Years, says Kikyo. Really, anything from the Synthesis album is incredible. Absolutely. I will fucking defend Evanescence. Like, I'm not gonna say that it's everyone's thing. I'm just gonna say it's not the joke that everyone thought it was. There's a lot of really important and meaningful tracks, I think, on that album. like a lot of them are not just like the angsty "wake me up" and all of that. There's I like that there's Imaginary, which is a track about creating your own internal world to escape from like the real world kind of sucking. There's Hello, I think it's called. But it's this very soft and haunting tune about a little girl on a playground, or a child even on a playground, that is quiet and perhaps even seemingly not alive anymore. And the last verse is a very sudden burst of energy, screaming for help, and then finding themselves ignored again. It's a really good song, and also very emotive. And also, symphonic metal is some of the best music you will ever listen to. I will fight you on this. I was thinking of a different song instead with Wake Me Up, like, yes. Wake me up before you go. I ain't planning on, or I ain't dreaming of going so. The fucking Christ, I don't remember the lyrics. Expect me to remember lyrics as a singer? Christ, that's stupid. But it was fun. Oh, garage open, have to go. Alright, bye-bye. Have a good time, Red Tomato. We'll talk probably later. Thank you for hosting and letting us know what's happened. Yee. But yes, I will say that I do love deeply emotional music. I do think that being able to get into, like, a lot of people are like, oh, the screamo emo music of the early aughts is like, it's so silly, man. They're always, so moody and emotional. It's like, well, you try living in an immediate post 9/11 society without getting deeply emotional about shit. We've kind of just taken for granted that things are the way they are, but life really did change when the September 11th nation attacked. Anyway. As much as I love your streams, I gotta get ready for work. Yeah, it's getting kind of to that point. I'm starting to kind of feel the edge of my voice growing a little bit ragged. So, I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. It's been actually almost 3 hours of me streaming, and a lot of you have actually been here the entire time. Thank you so much, and obviously, I have my appreciation for Griffin for joining in as long as he did. Thank you to all of you for putting up with my soapboxing in between the more pleasant conversations that were going on. I do hope to be continuing to maybe stream more than once a week, if I possibly can. Deeply emotional music gives me good angst, ideas for my babies, good luck with work. Love you, Lord. Take care, boys. Been absolutely lovely. Thank you, guys. And I hopefully will see you guys on Saturday, which is a couple of days away. But I am looking forward to... I need to release the stream from this. I'm an idiot. I need to fucking stay on top of my game, y'all. But... you guys take care, and I will hopefully see you guys soon. Bye-bye!